about to leave. Already packing, come with me. I'm not.
Hello friends and enemies, welcome back to Happy for Now, and I'm really excited about today's video. So I wanted to do a video talking about a little bit of where to get started in romance. Perhaps you are curious about the genre, you want to give it a try, you're just not sure where to start in a certain subgenre. Maybe you read some, you liked it, you want to venture further in. I have a big list for you today of places that you could potentially start. This is just a video I had kicking around in my head, and I thought, you know, I think this would be fun. Yeah, let's talk about where to start. So the first things first, I would think about what things you like in movies or TV when there is a romance or a rom-com element happening. You know, what do you like in those things, and go from there and pick up those tropes in your romance books. But let's say you literally are like, I don't care, I'm overwhelmed. Because there's a lot of options. Well, first up, let's talk about contemporary. So I've got a list of a couple books and some authors I think are great starting points in contemporary. Obviously, these may not work for you, but I still think they can work pretty well for most people. First of all, if you want to dive right into some great filth and dirty talk, Tessa Bailey is your gal. She delivers repeatedly in all of her books, I feel like, on the filthy talk and the smut. Like, those books have a lot of sex in them. They may have cute illustrated covers, but they're packing, okay? So be prepared. But Tessa Bailey is a perfect start if that's what you're looking for. There's also like cute and sweet, I will call it. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not like smut in it, like that there's no sex, because there's 100% sex in these books. And that would be a series that I've converted a lot of people to romance with, which is Alyssa Cole's Reluctant Royals. This follows a series of royals who are very reluctant to take their crown or title, and it makes sense. There's a lot of drama. The first one is A Princess in Theory. This follows the Nigerian prince email scam. But what if the email you were getting wasn't a scam and they really needed you to come be the princess? That's it. This is mistaken identity / secret identity sort of happening, and then, oh no, you're actually a princess reveals. It is so fun. This whole series is a blast. I loved every single book in it. So I just think it's one of those series that like can hook you in and get you more interested in romance if you aren't yet. Another one that I often recommend people is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Wong. Again, yes, it is an illustrated cover. It still has sex in it. It is not like a clean and cute situation happening. But I also think this is a really great one. This one follows our heroine. She is hiring a male escort to teach her how to have sex and how to be in a relationship, because she is autistic and doesn't know how, and he happens to also be a fashion designer, and it's just their relationship. And then he like makes her clothes without like tags to irritate her, and I was just like, I'm in love. I'm in love. But this was a big surprise for me personally. It wasn't a book I thought when it came out I would love as much as I do, but here I am still talking about it years later, and I do think this is just one that's a really good starting point because it's very sweet, it's very cute. And if you want to read short, funny rom-coms, I think Christina C. Jones's Wright Brothers series or The Love Sisters, I think it's The Love Sisters, are two great short, quick series you can read. There's 3 books in each of them. You can dive in on either series, and you will get these like under 200 page like rom-com-y, like laugh out loud books that are absolutely delightful, and I highly recommend. Let's talk about fantasy. So I don't have a ton of fantasy romance recs, and I'm not going to recommend Sarah J. Maas here because I think that's been done enough, and I don't think she needs more recommendations at the end of the day. So first of all, I have Song of the Forever Rains by E.J. Mello. I read this recently. It was a Prime first read, and I was really surprised by this one. This is definitely more fantasy than romance, so I think it will suit people on that end of the spectrum. Like if you're looking for less romance but a good romance theme in the fantasy, this is it. It also has a really interesting world and world building happening, and I'm really curious to pick up the second book, so that's a good thing. Like, I feel like a lot of series I will leave and never pick up book 2, but I'm actually like excited for book 2 to drop this month when this video comes out in October. So I think that will be a fun one for people to try. Definitely lower on the sexy time scale though. Then we have Midwinter Mail Order Bride by Katie Wilde. This is a total surprise for me. I went into this book not thinking I would like it as much as I did, and lo and behold, I loved it. So this follows a female main character who's been forced to another land to marry this guy that's known as like the destroyer, the destruction, and like he is known as like this war hero. And obviously like she's like not really here for it. And their meet cute is like her standing on like a couch or a bed with a sword, and she's like, get away from me. So good. So good. And then they journey back across the lands because she's convinced something is harming her family back home where she's from, and he believes her and takes her on this whole trip, and they fall in love. They end up on the same horse. It's just so good. Higher on the sexy time scale here, and short. This is a very quick read, but I still think it's one that's just an absolute blast of a fantasy setting. There's not a ton of world building, but you know enough that you're like invested. Then last I have A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Mila Vane for fantasy. This is one that's hard to read. I love this book. This book does not work for everyone, and it's never going to work for everyone. We have Yavine, our heroine, who is disabled. She has a bad knee and has been trapped in a tower, and she gets rescued by our hero. Although I don't think he doesn't really realize he's rescuing her, kind of, I guess. He thinks he's kind of kidnapping her. Anyways, they're traveling together. There's a lot of really not great things he does to her. I also want to give quick content warning. There's a horse death in this. Death of an animal. But yeah, he does some not great stuff, and maybe doesn't redeem himself quite enough. But I still think this is one of those ones that if you like fantasy, you probably would like this a lot. It's also like, I mean, you've got to be down for a hero that is morally gray in this situation for sure. And yeah, I really liked this one. I think it's a very enjoyable read. I think there's a lot to enjoy about this. I personally, the main character, the female main character, Yavine, is who carried this story for me and why I enjoyed it so much. So maybe give it a go. It's kind of a cross of like dark romance and fantasy romance, which we're going to talk about dark romance next. Dark romance, what is it? I would say dark romance is anything with themes that we would deem as like not the best. Questionable, morally gray heroes, morality chain where the hero's only good for her. You know, when maybe they're involved in murder and other things. Again, reading this doesn't mean you condone these things in real life, but that's what dark romance is, you know, mafia, motorcycle clubs. So I've got a couple here for you. I definitely have more recs here than I did fantasy. So first of all, I want to recommend Charge by Kate C. Wells. I love Kate C. Wells. I think she's a great author that recently was I discovered this year from some recommendations from people, and she writes this motorcycle club that's not really a motorcycle club anymore. So some of the stuff that's like iffy on that is gone. We follow a single mom who's trying to raise her son. Big content warning, she was raped as a teen, and that's why she has this baby, and her parents are constantly trying to take him away. Well, Charge's dad lives across the street from her, and he keeps helping her out, and just like no questions asked, just like takes them to dinner for a date with her son, like doesn't care that her kid's there, and it's very sweet. And I don't like kids in romances, but this worked for me in so many ways because Charge just like wanted to take care of them, and he did. Like that's what he did. He wasn't just like, I want to take care of you. Like he was just like, I'm gonna take care of you, and did the thing like without going through it. But this is like dark light. Like there's some like background plot happening that is a little bit dark and twisted with another motorcycle club, but it's not enough to like draw you out of the story or be like, oh, this is really bad. You're just like, oh, that's not good, but you're like, okay, well, he seems on the up and up, and he is. So I think that's a good one. Now, if you want another one that I would call dark light and soap opera-y, I would recommend Anna Huang. She has Twisted Games and Twisted Love. You could read either one. The two have like a slight overlapping plot point, but you could honestly start with either one. So the first one, Twisted Love, is a brother's best friend, and her brother leaves to go do his like medical thing abroad, and like Doctors Without Borders, that's what it's called. She goes to do that, and she lives with her friends next door, and like they kind of sometimes get into trouble. Like it literally opens with him picking her up in the middle of nowhere, like in a bad part of town, because her phone died and like no one else could get her. So he went and got her, and he's like, what is wrong? You know, like he's like scolding her, super grumpy. And she's very sunshiny, and it's adorable. But it's her brother asks his best friend to watch her and make sure like nothing happens while he's gone, because he's gonna be gone for like a year or whatever. And he moves into the house next door, and like she keeps going over there and bugging him. and like is determined to befriend him. So lo and behold, they befriend each other. We take a turn towards the end for some soap opera-y family drama that I really enjoyed. Definitely think the third act breakup was a little much, but it worked for me still. And I do think this is one that, like, if you want that soap opera popcorn you can't put down, Anna Huang's got you covered. And then Twisted Games is a bodyguard princess romance, and it is Princess Diaries 2, I believe is the one. So it's that. This is really good. It has a throne scene, and he also grumpy. She's also a little sunshiny, and he just kind of like has no tolerance for a lot of things. Like, he doesn't want to go back to her home country, and he ends up going back because he doesn't want to make her go by herself, and it's just really cute. So yeah, those are a good starting point. Very soapy though, like that soap opera popcorn, these got you covered. Then another one that I didn't adore, but I am going to continue the series, is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. Now you might be like, why are you recommending a book you didn't love? Here's the thing. I didn't enjoy it because it was just too much of the same trope. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. This one's really interesting. I think the reason I think it could be a good intro into darker romances is it's pretty light on the dark themes early on. I'm assuming it gets a little darker the further we go. It's still not like super dark. Hades and Persephone retellings to an extent will always be kind of dark romancy, I feel like, just because of what's going on. But he traps her in the underworld, and she has to complete a task to be allowed to leave permanently or get out of this deal she made. And this was fun. I think if I wasn't like a seasoned romance reader, I would have really enjoyed it a lot more. Then last, I have The O'Malleys by Katie Roberts. So this series is her mafia romance, and it's set in Boston. The first one is an arranged marriage, and it just follows the family from there. And I really think that this one is like, these are tame for Katie's like newer works. These are much tamer, and I feel like they would be a good point to start if you wanted to explore mafia romance and you didn't want to like dive head first, if that makes sense. But I really like the O'Malley series. I'm like halfway through it currently, and I can't wait to finish it. All right, let's talk about historical romances. I'm gonna give you authors, and I've got one specific book rec here, but I would say I stand by this video I've already made, which is Historical Romance by Beginners. It is older, but I still think every book I recommended on there, I would still recommend to a beginner. Tessa Dare, Joanna Shoup, Beverly Jenkins, and Sophie Jordan are probably my top 4 go-to author recommendations for historical romances if you want Regency. Everyone besides Beverly Jenkins writes Regency-esque era stuff. Joanna Shoup writes Gilded Age and has Regency. Beverly Jenkins writes in the Americas in historical. So that is really different and not something we see a lot of. Alyssa Cole also has some of these. And I've enjoyed every Beverly Jenkins book I've read. I've yet to dislike one, so I just think she's one of those ones you could pick up and enjoy. Also, she is a staple of historical romance, specifically in the Americas during that time. One that I don't see talked about a lot is The Lotus Palace by Jeannie Lynn. This does have a content warning for abuse and rape and some other things, and murder. This is like a murder mystery romance, and it's one that I think could work really well for people who like murder mysteries or cozies maybe. I mean, it's more than a cozy, but we follow a woman who works in the brothel situation type thing, and this guy who's investigating it, and they slowly start to fall in love, and it's really beautiful and really good. It was the perfect escape that I needed when I read it, so I highly recommend this one if you like a mystery with your romance. Next, we have monster or alien romances. I've got 3 easy recs here, all right? I'm not gonna give you anything too bonker pants. Like, we're gonna go a little bonkers, but like obviously if you're just diving into this genre, you don't need like you don't need what I read regularly. You need like entry points. So I'm gonna say I Married a Lizard Man by Regine Abel is a great starting point because it's actually a really sweet romance. At the end of the day, it's a very cute, it is still dirty. Sweet does not mean clean here. So this is actually a pretty fun romance. She ends up with a matchmaking service, goes to this planet to try and help this tribe of lizard people get through some issues they're having. She helps save them. It has a little bit of a white savior complex, I won't deny that, but I still loved this book and found it to be really enjoyable. Hold on. So I still really enjoyed this overall, and I think it's one of those ones that like, you're like, oh, that cover, but like the cover, no payoff in the book really. Like, it's just not that, it's not as weird as the cover gives you. Another one I'm gonna recommend that is an alien one, which is Toxic Desire by Robin Lovett. This is going to be a little tamer than Your Eyes Planet Barbarians, I feel like, which I do love, but I think those are a hard one to start with if you're not prepared. This one follows a woman who crash lands on an alien planet, and the planet like seeps out this pheromone that makes you want to have sex all the time. And she runs into an enemy, and they keep having to bone on their journey back to the village thing to save her, to stave off the like intense, like it'll like drive you mad basically if you don't. So they have to do that. And it's just really fun enemies to lovers, personally, in my opinion. They're like gold-plated aliens, so they're not too weird. And then the one that if you like, I think if you want to dive headfirst into the bonkers monster stuff, I would say you could read Morning Glory Milking Farm. I think that book is absolutely delightful. I love that book so much. But again, I know it's not going to work for everyone, but it definitely is a book that talks about sex work, what is and isn't. You know, there is a milking farm where they milk these minotaurs, and that is used to make Viagra for men, for human men basically. And all the minotaurs do it because it pays really, really well, so it just allows them to buy other things, like extra things in their lives, and afford luxuries or whatever. One of the women who works there is one of the milkers. She helps, she falls in love with a client, it turns out, and it's just a really slow burn, like slow burn, slow build, and what turns into like an incredibly sweet romance. So if you really want to go for it with the bonkers, this is definitely one that would deliver on that front. And then last but not least, I'm going to give you a couple author recommendations if you want to try some erotic romances. I think that Nikki Sloan is a great starting point. She has a variety of options. There's the Nashville Neighborhoods, there's the Blindfold Club, there is the Filthy Rich Americans, and these are all like borderline dark or erotic romance. There's also Katie Roberts' Taboo series, A Touch of Taboo. You Have Your Dad Will Do, which is where she hooks up with her ex-fiance's dad as revenge because he cheated on her. So good. So good. And then Shay Sanders has A Flick Between Friends, which I read recently, and I would say this is closer to erotic romance than like pure romance. I mean, it's still romance, but it involves so much sex that I feel like we could like kind of say it's erotic romance. Plus it's already out and like hidden from freaking Amazon because they're a pain in the butt. But this follows two friends who are furloughed from their job, and she entices her male friend to help her make tapes, sex tapes, and they sell them on their own website, and she makes a bunch of money, and it follows their adventure with this and them falling in love. And it's really cute and sweet, but also perfectly smutty. So those are all my recs for this one. If you made it this far, let me know if there was a subgenre I missed that you want me to do a video on. I'm happy to do one. And if not, you can leave me a owl emoji. Angus is currently chewing on a cat toy, so that is an owl. So yeah, leave me an owl emoji. I'll have links to all these books I talked about down below in that description box, as well as links to be my friend anywhere on the internet, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Already packing, come with me. I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be. Life with no distractions, we'll get away. This is what we wait.